Anyone who believes in indefinite growth on a physically finite planet is either mad or an economist.
We don't want to focus politics on a notion that involves the rejection of principles around which a large majority of our fellow citizens organize their lives.
We are not as endlessly manipulable and as predictable as you would think.
So most of you obviously are familiar with the concept of the big lunch, and it is where we wanted to start our debate this evening. 750,000 people in the first year, 1.2 million people in the second, 2 million in the third, and then a whopping 8.5 million people went to a big lunch last year. That was aided and abetted by being joined up with the Diamond Jubilee celebrations, wasn't it? But the positive impact of the big lunch, and this is where it helps us to understand social impact and communities, is undeniable. Research shows 97% of people taking part would recommend it to a friend. That's better than the best face cream. Whilst 83% felt better about their neighbourhood, and 2/3 say they're now more likely to take part in other events and activities with their community. So it's just a massive, whopping success story, isn't it, Tim?
It has been delightful in its success, but I think it's really important to stress the fact that throughout the country, before the big lunch was given a name, people have been having lunches time immemorial. We know that the breaking of bread together is something far more important than eating, and that's been known since the beginning of time. All we did was to provide an excuse for a nation that is perhaps slightly more reticent of speaking to their neighbours than they'd like to be. We gave them just that thing which got them over the threshold. It's a different question saying, will you have lunch with me in the street, to will you do the big lunch? You can create a kind of third-party entity. But for us, at Eden, we felt very strongly that we were trying to catalyse something, and we're desperately keen not to make other people feel we were trying to colonise a space that so many other people are working in. So I feel a bit awkward about the question. It's a bit like, oh, isn't it a heroic thing, the big lunch? Loads of people are doing wonderful things in that space. And I think all we've done is create that extra little bit of an excuse to make people feel comfortable.
So, I mean, in 10 years' time, do you have some kind of a vision for the big lunch? I mean, is it going to become more than just a lunch in your mind?
I'm hoping it's not in my mind at all anymore. Eden acts as a catalyser, a smoother of things to make things possible, but the Eden Project and the people who came in to sponsor it agreed for the first time in any of the company's cases to make their letters really small. When you look at the logos, it's just really modest. The idea is actually to excite people to make their big lunches. So when you ask me what do I imagine in 10 years' time, I hope, A, that the Eden Project has nothing to do with it. I hope, except for all of us participating in it, and that it has become the equivalent of a neighbour's day, where people actually, they just think, first Sunday of June, we go and we with our neighbours have lunch, and we just feel really pleased that we've got neighbours. And that's it.
Jonathan, shall we try and put some facts and figures onto the notion of social action and community cohesion? Because you've done this fantastic study which talks all about the big lunch, and you've looked very carefully, haven't you, at the impact.
A lot of people in this country have a sense that their community is not perhaps as strong as they would like it to be, that they're not quite as connected to the people around them as they might like. And actually, you know, sadly, there's quite a lot of research that indicates that that is indeed the case, that the sort of level of sort of social cohesion and social connection in many communities in the UK has declined over the last few years. And given what the big lunch is trying to do, trying to bring people together, trying to form that, what Tim's referred to as sort of human warming, that sort of social spark between people, we wanted to ask, does that actually make any difference? Does that make an ongoing change? Do people actually do something different? And we found that they did. It really works. Big lunches take place evenly across every type of community in the UK, from the most deprived to the most affluent, north, south, urban, rural. We found that 9 out of 10 people did meet new people. We found that 8 out of 10 people felt better about their community, felt more positive about their neighbours after taking part in a big lunch. And when we went back year after year, we found that 8 out of 10 people had stayed in touch with the new people that they'd met. These were ongoing relationships, and more than half of them had then gone on to do something in their community with their neighbours, you know, whether that was, you know, a knitting circle or an after-school club or looking after an old lady down the street or a walking bus, a whole range of things, of communities getting stronger, looking out for each other more. And that's real change, and that's change that's not driven by government, or by local authorities, which makes it resilient, which means in an era of tight public finances, it can't be cut by government. Government can't stop you doing it. Successive governments have tried to build social capital and to build cohesion, and it's very hard to do through top-down initiatives.
Yeah.
But putting people power into the hands of people themselves to work with their neighbours to achieve that, it's an immensely powerful thing.
Let's talk a little bit about the money, because Linda, from the Big Lottery Fund, you're in charge of looking at the spreadsheet of, we're going to put X amount of money in. We hope it's going to have all of the benefits that Jonathan has talked about. And how much have you committed to the project, and over what kind of a time span?
Since 2009 until the aspiration that it becomes organic and people do it themselves, say around 2015, we will have put in around and just under 10 million to support the whole campaign and to encourage people to come out and break bread with their neighbours, to become more socially active in their community. And to put that into context, the Big Lottery Fund, which has the responsibility to distribute cash to communities and charities, distributes 700 million per annum over that period. So the funding for the Big Lunch is a very small proportion of what we do, and the kind of grant size of what we do ranges from anything between £300 and £150 million. And the Big Lunch is about what the Big Lottery Fund's mission is about, which is supporting people to make a difference in their community and targeted on disadvantage, without necessarily putting money into every street party. We have created, I think, the ability for people to feel empowered enough to knock on their neighbours' doors and to begin to engage in social conversation that certainly in my street never happened. And I think that's what's so important about that kind of partnership, which has enabled the Big Lunch to thrive.
Yeah. Does your awarding of the money to the Big Lunch depend on reaching a lower demographic? Perhaps, it depends on the areas of social deprivation, proving that they would like to be involved in the project too.
Yeah. Well, that was one of the issues at the beginning, was I guess was a bit of cynicism around whether there would be that equality across the demographics. And so that was one of the outcomes that the Big Lunch was charged with delivering, was to make sure that there was a targeting on the most deprived communities, as well as the expectation that it would be cross-societal.
Yeah, because it would be easy to be cynical about it and think it's for bunting botherers and, it's a lovely excuse for people who make delightful fennel salads and inventive tray bakes to get together. But, it's not what you wanted from it.
We map the postcodes where the big lunches take place against the multiple deprivation indices, or the indices of multiple deprivation that the government brings out. And by percentile, it's basically even. There's no discernible pattern of more lunches in poorer areas or richer areas. It's exactly even across them. So
your money, the continuation of the money, would obviously depend on this demographic spread being covered. What else would it depend on?
What we're looking for and what we're talking to Eden about in terms of the next progression of the Big Lunch is what if you begin the conversation at the lunches about wouldn't it be wonderful if, or what is it that bugs you about where you live? Is there something you could do about it? And go on from there to actually create what is true social capital, the ability for people to come together and to decide that they have the ability to make a difference in their community and they can take action. And that's where it would be really nice, because then there would be the ability not just to do things in the neighbourhood, but to tap perhaps into other lottery funding to make those kind of social projects a reality.
Isn't that where it immediately becomes complicated, and it helps us to answer the question that we're debating tonight, which is whose responsibility is a community? Because as soon as you stop just being a lunch where everyone can come along and, in a sense, take from it what they want to, when you start asking for more things to be solved than just a very lovely day out, you surely have to, you have an expectation of other people helping you, don't you? You're bringing in other responsibilities, you're bringing in other parts of the community.
I think a lot of people haven't thought about the fact that if they take responsibility and their neighbour then takes responsibility, suddenly you've, as a collective, given yourselves permission to champion whatever it is you want. Well, actually, we really hate what's going on here. but now we've all met, why don't we collectively do something about it? And I think one of the things we're hoping for is that by having identified those people who want to be active, by them then taking permission, and then giving them the link into organisations like the Big Lottery, they can then take their own decision-making and become independent of anything that we do. They've actually made a connection, and they can actually take, it's a lovely word, agency in their lives.
Mm. But don't those kind of people manage to get their voice heard anyway? Aren't they already part of action groups within the communities? You know, if there's something that is particularly bothering them, why would, you know, sitting around and having a nice day out with neighbours particularly help them?
I'll have to ask this man.
Yes,
but
let's ask that man.
But the evidence that I have seen, not from this year but the year before, is that a huge majority, a vast majority of the people who organise big lunches are people who have never led social action before.
You would imagine who are getting the most funding are the people who put together a decent proposal, know how to do it. But you've looked at that, haven't you, to make sure that that's not always going to be the case?
Yeah, we have looked at that, and it's certainly true to say that some of the larger institutions or large charities would have almost employees who write lottery bids. And what we were really keen to do was to get under that layer and to really put the message out to other communities that lottery funding was for them. I mean, the vast majority of the lottery playing public ought to think about where that good cause money is going, because it's 28p in every pound of the lottery. And so what we wanted to do with our partnership and public engagement programme, of which the Big Lunch is only one, was to, with partners, either broadcast or print, to spread the word much further than we'd be able to do with our marketing budget, to say, lottery funding is for you. You know, what kind of project would you like to make your application to? And in one area, in the Greater Manchester area, we partnered up with the Manchester Evening News and said we would put 10 grand up for each of the 14 Greater Manchester boroughs, and we campaigned to get people to really get the creative juices going as to what they would do with that money. And the vast majority of them, over 68%, had never dreamt that they could apply to lottery funding.
The hope is by 2015, it's so self-sustaining it doesn't need any more money. Did you know that? She said that.
To be honest, we were hoping to stop next year. The project has got some traction. There's loads of people involved in it. And having got them involved, it seems a real waste not to see whether you can get it just over the line so that it's completely got the air under its wings to fly on its own. I can see people nodding when they say, can you imagine why you need the money? Actually, I'll tell you why you need the money, because you need to penetrate communities to give them permission to do it. People are very funny. At the risk of being a real bore, I was once asked, what's the best book I've ever read in my life? And to my amazement, my answer surprised even me, which was Mrs. Beaton's book of household management. As I read the first paragraph, it said, when a lady first goes out into society, she will know nothing. And she will stand around a group of people, and if someone says, Mrs. Wainwright has had a very good performance of The Rivals in London, you must now go to powder your nose and write it in a little booklet, put it back in your stocking, and then you go home. And then the next time you go out, you will have some conversation. And you can say at the next place, when you go to play canasta or have sherry, you can say, I hear Mrs. Wainwright is most excellent in The Rivals. Until I was 35 years old, I used to criticise people for small talk. I was a complete tosser. Because I had never understood what small talk was. It is big talk, it is huge talk. It's saying, I am lonely, I want to have a conversation, and I need a code to get into it so we can, as human beings, warm up. That's all the Big Lunch is. It is a code to enable people to warm up, to get over their shyness. That is all it is.
Yeah. The question, though, about money, and why you need it. Bear with me. You have some commercial sponsorship as well from Asda and MasterCard.
Yep.
Is there a danger with that it takes something away from that organic nature of wonderful small talk? The feeling that you're empowering yourself by sitting down and having lunch with your neighbours. You know, it's just you, all of you there. It's not someone getting something else out of it who's way over there.
I think, in a cynical world, you might think that. But what has impressed me a lot has been that on this particular venture, it has been something that the people from those companies have believed was important, not in terms of their brand going big. It was actually more an internal thing to actually want to engage with something in their communities. How do you get a whole lot of people to know that Big Lunch is on a certain day and encourage people, remind them to get them over that threshold? That if you just said, it's on a certain day, let's do it, it's not going to happen, is it? That's what you need the money for. It is actually going out, speaking to the Rotary clubs, the Women's Institutes, who are the backbone of this country, is made up of these membership organisations that actually then take it on as their own and then spread it. And our job is simply to try and get to talk to the people, to encourage them, to excite them, to say that actually you won't look like a plonker if you hold a big lunch and you'll be the only one in the whole of Yorkshire. You actually tell them about other people, because people get confidence by knowing there are other ones, don't they?
Yes.
We're all kind of clubbable. We need to feel, oh, we're part of something bigger. That's fine, that's okay. I'm not going to look like an idiot doing this for the first time.
Yeah. Linda, from your experience of all of the other projects, I mean, presumably we have gone beyond that tipping point where we can object to commercial sponsorship being involved in order to get something off the ground.
I think it's a really nice partnership because the sponsors, in terms of the Big Lunch, are able to bring to the party stuff that lottery funding couldn't possibly pay for, whether it be television advertising, but that ability to have much wider reach, which is really money can't buy stuff, which we at the Big Lottery Fund do ourselves. They're maybe not technically sponsors, but they are, to all intents and purposes, a partner sponsor. So we work with the BBC, and we did a 6-part series called Village SOS, which the BBC didn't put a penny in. We were putting up 6 million. But the idea there was to use the power of television and that audience to inspire a whole number of other villages. So we used 6 to say, if you've been inspired by what they've done, which was really about putting the heart back into a village, creating a social enterprise which would sustain the village. And we then put out the call to others who'd seen the 6 to make application. And so we couldn't have done any of that or even had the reach to all those other villages without that partnership with a broadcaster.
Just picking up on Tim's point about small talk, because I think it is important to look at what comes out of this at different levels. So on one level, people in communities might go and put in an application for a grant and do something sort of practical and big and change something. But on another level, they might just do something very small scale and, you know, have a little knitting circle that helps older people in the community get out a bit more. And then on another level, just having that small talk, just having that connection is a good thing in and of itself. And even if they then don't go on to do anything, certainly not to apply for a lottery grant or even set up whatever it is, just knowing each other, just having that human connection, recognising people in the street, saying good morning, saying hello, that has a surprisingly large impact across a whole range of quite big, chunky sort of things that government's always trying to solve, education, health, etc. Those little things, that little connection, the well-being impact that has, the small talk in and of itself, it's not small talk. It's actually vital in terms of sort of weaving a fabric of community that helps people feel better about themselves and that actually helps them be healthier and happier. Yeah. So even just at that level, it has a real measurable impact.
Although we've probably talked, you know, in categories tonight and about big concepts and all of that kind of stuff, it's really important to think what the country would be like if we didn't have a big lunch at all. You know, we have something that is really valuable and that people are really enjoying and that's just growing exponentially, and we would just be a bit of a poorer nation if we didn't have it. So if we all carry that little cultish notion with us throughout the month of June, then I think we do our country quite a good service. I'd like you to thank all of the people on the panel very much indeed for their time.